Alright, hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing a very stressful video for me. You are probably going to enjoy it. I'm a little stressed out. We're going to go through both of my bookshelves and the various piles of books around my room and pull out all of the books that I own that I have not read. So when I first organized these shelves, I did have like separate shelves for TBR, to be read books. And then for various reasons, mostly me just being a disorganized mess, that kind of fell by the wayside. So now they're kind of just mixed in throughout. So I think that's why a lot of the times I forget that I own these books. Also, I'm a mood reader. I like to just kind of see what I feel like. So a lot of times I'll take things out of the library. I'll get ebooks from Libby. That's the app that I use to get ebooks for my library. So a lot of the times I'll just do that when it's like, kid, again, you have a million books that you own, that you already spent money on, that you should read. It's gonna be a lot of books. I already know it. I already know it's gonna be so many. I just want to make a note. I do have these Harry Potter books here because it's a cute set that looks like the castle, and I do like Harry Potter, but I think I'm gonna move them because I don't want to be promoting a trash person in my videos. There are no TERFs allowed on this channel. There will be no transphobia allowed on this channel, so these might have to go. All right, let's get it started. I'm like procrastinating because I don't want to know. All right, let's start up here. First book, which is great because I've actually really been wanting to read this month for Black History Month, is The New Jim Crow. Yeah, so this book is a nonfiction book that talks about the laws and systems that we still have in place in America, like the war on drugs and the prison industrial complex that specifically target people of color. It kind of reminds me of a really good documentary by Ava DuVernay that I watched that's on Netflix, 13th, basically about how the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery unless they've committed a crime. I don't think that's the exact wording, but basically if someone's arrested and put into prison, they're basically allowed to still be slaves. How multi-billion-dollar corporations in the United States profit off of prison labor. So I think that's what this goes into. I'm really excited to read this. Hopefully gonna get to it in February for Black History Month, but if not, definitely soon. I'm glad we started off on one that I have been meaning to read and I didn't forget about. Dune. All right, so the next two that I have are Children of Dune and Dune Messiah. I think it's Dune Messiah and then Children of Dune, which is the second and third book in the Dune trilogy. I have read Dune, the first one, and I loved it. Highly recommend the audiobook because it has like cool space sounds in it, which makes me feel like I'm in a movie. I love an audiobook. I'm always gonna be talking about audiobooks. Not sure, does anyone know when the Dune movie is coming out? Because I think when I see that, that'll like get me back in the Dune spirit. So I'll probably put these off till the movie comes out, but we don't know when the movie's coming out, so these are on hold indefinitely. And now we have another book in a series that I like but haven't finished, is The Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch. This is the third book in the Gentleman Bastard series. I loved the first two books so much, and I really do want to get to this one. It's just that the fourth book isn't out yet. I don't know when it's coming out. There probably is a date now, but when I finished Red Seas Under Red Skies, I don't think there was a publication date, so I was like, maybe hold off and read this closer to then so that I don't have to wait between books, even though I'm waiting between the second and third. I don't know why I do that, but that's why I haven't read this one yet, but I definitely want to. And if you haven't read this series yet, please get on it. If anyone wants to buddy read this with me, I'm always down for a buddy read. All right, now we have Zodiac Unmasked by Robert Graysmith. So Zodiac Unmasked is the second book by Robert Graysmith, the first one being Zodiac. Now Zodiac is the book that the movie Zodiac was based on, and Robert Graysmith's character, or he was the foundation for the character that Jake Gyllenhaal plays in that movie. And the first one was really good, very interesting. I love that movie and I love true crime, so I wanted to get like the actual book about it. And then I bought the second one and then I never read it because I forgot I had it. So I'll probably get to this one. Maybe I'll do like a true crime, like my favorite true crime books video, and I'll read this for that. I'm just like coming up with reasons to give myself to read these books. I don't know, I don't need reasons, I want to read them, but it's reasons to read them quickly. All right, next one, Earthsea, A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. LeGuin. This is the first in the Earthsea cycle, I think it's called. It is the Earthsea cycle. I know, see, I know stuff. Yeah, so this one is a classic. People are always raving about this. It's not even very long. It's like less than 300 pages, which for a fantasy book is like nothing. And this cover's so pretty. Look how pretty this cover is. I am just always thirsty for a pretty cover. The next one is Lord of Chaos by Robert Jordan. How did I forget his name? This is the 6th book in the Wheel of Time. This is the next one that I'm on. I've read the first 5. I'm very excited about this series. I really like it, but I know that in the middle there's kind of like a dip in the quality of the books is what I've been told. So I think that's why I've kind of put off continuing on the series, because I know I'm getting into like the kind of middle slog, but I definitely want to finish and read them all. This one, again, a classic fantasy. Farm boy discovers that he's the chosen one. Him and his friends go on a quest to save the world. It's been done a million times and I love it every time, and Robert Jordan does it really great. So definitely want to continue on this one. I'm thinking about doing like 24-hour reading vlogs for each of these long fantasy books, because how many pages is it? It's like 1,000 pages. I can read that in a day. And another book in a fantasy series that I haven't finished. So this one is The Drawing of Three, which is the 2nd book in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, which is his fantasy series. And they made a book about these. What? A book? It is a book. They made a movie about these with Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey, I think. But I think, I keep saying I think, because I haven't read these books, so I don't know anything for certain. I just, from the information that I've gathered, I'm pretty sure that movie was based on most of the series, not just the first book, so I haven't watched it yet because I don't want to spoil myself since I've only read the first book, but this one's the 2nd one. Probably gonna take me a while to read these as I have so many fantasy series I haven't finished. I haven't read a ton of Stephen King because I'm not like a horror person, but I do want to read some of his stuff. I definitely want to read Misery and Not It. Clowns are no, not for me. No, never. But this one, yes. And again, this video shouldn't just be books that I own that are unread. They should just be fantasy series that I haven't finished yet. Now I have the next 2 books in the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. I loved the 5th season. It was so good. The world in this series so far is so interesting, so different from anything I've really read in fantasy. It's a big departure from the normal medieval Europe-based fantasy worlds, and the young boy, like I just said about the Wheel of Time, no shame to the Wheel of Time, but young boy on a farm discovers that he's the chosen one. This is like a very different take on the classic fantasy tropes. I'm very excited to finish these. She's a legend. Another one, Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This is Brandon Sanderson's first book that he ever published, I believe. Don't kill me. Now everyone knows, if you've seen any videos of mine before, I love Brandon Sanderson. He's one of my favorite authors of all time, but I haven't read Elantris yet. Don't shoot me. I just know that, I mean, it was his first book. I'm sure it's still amazing, but people say that obviously he's just grown and gotten better with every book that he's published, like anyone would. So this one isn't his best work, but it's a very interesting premise. So this book is a standalone fantasy novel, which is about a city that used to be run by magic, but when magic failed, the city started to rot, and now it is an abandoned city. And I believe there's a new capital city of this land next door, and people are starting to notice that maybe the city is coming back to life, I think. Okay, now we're gonna get into a controversial topic. This is The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. It is the 2nd book in the King Killer Chronicles, the 1st book being The Name of the Wind. I did read The Name of the Wind, and I bought this one because everyone, when I bought them both together, and I got pretty UK covers, they're stunning, and I had heard so many great things about this series, and I read the first one and thought it was fine. Thought it was fine. The writing was great, the prose was stunning, he's a great author, but the story was boring and the characters were forgettable. and I should just cancel my channel right now for saying that. Now we have The Book of Life from Deborah Harkness, another book in a fantasy series. This is the third book in the All Souls trilogy. So this series is about a young witch named Diana who grew up kind of afraid of her own power and not wanting to use her magic. So she chooses to live a normal life, and she ends up being a historian and a professor at Oxford University, where she studies alchemical manuscripts and kind of the history of alchemy, and discovers along the way an alchemical manuscript that seems to have some kind of magical importance, and all of a sudden all of these magical creatures start kind of following her and harassing her, and she meets a vampire named Matthew who, I mean, they fall in love. Spoiler alert. And then the second one, I shouldn't spoil anything, but I don't know what the third one's about, but it's good, and there's a good TV show based on this too. I need to watch the second season, and then maybe I'll want to read this. Here we're getting into some history books. We have Elizabeth's Women, The Hidden Story of the Virgin Queen by Tracy Borman. This is obviously a history book about Queen Elizabeth I and the women in her life and the hidden story of her life. I don't know a ton about this book, but I am obsessed with Anne Boleyn, who is obviously Queen Elizabeth's mother. So when I saw Elizabeth's Women, I was like, probably gonna include her mom, who is my queen forever. And speaking of Anne Boleyn, here we have Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. So Wolf Hall is a historical fiction trilogy based on the life of Thomas Cromwell. Now, Thomas Cromwell was an advisor to King Henry VIII and lived a very interesting life. He went through a lot of highs and lows in his standing in the court, and was involved in a lot of drama and intrigue, especially, I believe, in this one around Anne Boleyn and the rise and fall of her standing in court as well. Now we have a book that was very popular on BookTube a few years ago when I first started watching, The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. This book, I believe, is a historical fiction, which maybe it has a little bit of magic in it. I believe the main character, Nella, is gifted a miniature house, like a doll house, which all of the rooms in it start to kind of magically appear like the rooms in her house, or the miniatures in the house start reflecting things that are going on in her life, which sounds a little mystical, so we'll see. I believe I got this book around the same time as The Miniaturist because they were both really popular on BookTube. This one is The Golem and the Jinni by Helene Wecker. So The Golem and the Jinni takes place here in New York City in 1899 and is a story about the meeting and lives and creation of a golem, which is from Jewish folklore. It is something made of clay, which is then brought to life. And the Jinni is from Islamic mythology and is like a genie. This one is born in Syria and now comes to New York, and the two of them meet, and it's about that, I think. I don't know how to describe these books when I haven't read them, but this, again, this cover is stunning. It's stunning. I really should read this one. Now this one I really want to read, and I totally forgot that I had it. This is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. This one is a very interesting book. It is about this house that I suppose is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, and I don't really want to know anything else about it because apparently it is a total trip and you shouldn't spoil yourself at all. Like, it's all written, like some of the pages, it's just so cool. I should do a reading vlog about this with my reactions because I know a lot of people have read this and like totally tripped out over it. So this one I have started reading like the first 2 pages of so many times, but I feel like I need to be in the perfect mind space. Like I need to like be in New England in the fall, up in Vermont in the mountains, just like alone and feeling like I'm cooler than everyone. This is Donna Tartt's The Secret History. Now, one of my favorite books of all time, you can't see, is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, which was so amazing. And this one is so right up my alley. It takes place in a fictional New England college, a very prestigious university up in like New Hampshire or Vermont, and a group of boys who go there who are, of course, feel like they're smarter than everyone, kind of pretentious, interested in the classics and their friendship. But it starts with one of them being murdered by the rest of them. And then I think we go back in time. That's like the first page, I'm not spoiling it. And then we go back in time and figure out how we got to this point. I don't know. I want to read everything Donna Tartt has ever written, but this also just sounds glorious. The next one is a very famous book, The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. He is a Spanish author, and this is a translated work, I believe. Yes, this is translated into English. This is a story within a story. It's about a young boy who becomes fascinated with this Catalan author and kind of goes on a journey to discover his life story. And I don't know what the story is within that story, maybe one of the author's works, but I believe it's like an allegory for death. That's all I know. But I've heard great things and I want to read it. I need to read more translated works this year for sure. I was really not great about that last year, so I should put this on my list for 2021. And we have Supermarket by Bobby Hall, who is actually Logic, the musician. This, I believe, is his first book, and it is about a kid named Flynn who works at a supermarket and is kind of depressed, living in his mom's house. Oh, but then he gets to work one day and there's a crime. Interesting. I thought this cover was just kind of cool, and knowing I don't listen to any of Logic's music, I don't really know anything about him, but I remember just seeing this cover and thinking it was cool, and then finding out the author was like a famous person, and I was like, huh. So I bought it. Sometimes I don't know why I buy books, but I own it now, so I have to read it. All right, we're on to the next shelf. Pretty sure I've read all of these. Yes, I've read all of those. This one, I've read all of these. I've also read all of these. All of those. I have The Mime Order by Samantha Shannon. I read the Bone season like my junior or senior year of college, so like 2014. And I remember buying both of these at the same time, mostly because I thought the covers were really dope. I love the Bone season cover, it's so pretty, but I didn't really like it. But I should explain what this is about. Yeah, so the first book in this series is about this girl named Paige. This takes place in the future of London, and she kind of works in the underground. She's like a dream walker, I believe, and can kind of go into people's minds, so that helps her with, you know, underground crime business. And we love magical crime. I do. I love like that's what I mean. The Lies of Locke Lamora, Six of Crows. We love like magical heists for the Final Empire. This one, we love a magical crime. So I was like, this is so up my alley. And I think I really liked the beginning, and then it got into like a weird romance. And I love romance in my books. In my fantasy books, I'm not like, I don't really read a lot of romance books on their own, but like romance in a book, all for it. But this one was just weird. I just don't think I liked the guy. So I don't know if I'm gonna read this one. I should just give both of these, I should just donate both of these or sell them. They're in great shape. They're so pretty. Like, look at this cover. It's so pretty with the red. I think I'll read the second one eventually. Just let me keep them on my shelf. This one, The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. Now, I don't really know anything about this. I just know that my favorite book of all time, one of, if not my number one favorite book of all time, is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This book is so good. It's so close to my heart. It's so magical that I immediately bought this when it came out. And then I think I got nervous that I wouldn't like it. So I haven't read it yet, but I really want to. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be amazing. She's amazing. She's amazing. It's gonna be great. Now, this one I believe my aunt gave me because she read it and really liked it, and she knows I like to read. It's Where the Crawdad Sings by Delia Owens. I don't know if I'll like this one, but a lot of people have. It was very popular. It was like New York Times bestseller. Everyone was reading it. Every mom's book club was reading it. And so, more than 1 million copies sold. So I don't really know. Oh, The Marsh Girl. Okay, so this takes place in North Carolina, and there's a girl called the Marsh Girl. Like a girl lives in the marsh and like haunts the town, and then some kid, like a guy, like a teenage guy, maybe? No, I don't even know if he's a teenager. Some hot guy dies and they blame the Marsh Girl. I didn't know it was like a crime, like a thrill. Is it like a thriller or a mystery? Okay, well now I'm sold. I have the Testaments. Oh my God. I hate when they put stickers, 30% off members, save 40. Well, it's good to know I saved 40%, but why are you gonna ruin the cover with this sticker? Anyway, this is The Testaments by Margaret Atwood, which is the sequel to The Handmaid's Tale. Now, I love The Handmaid's Tale, the book. The show was like traumatizing and I had to stop watching, but I really liked the book. And so when this came out, I immediately bought it. And then I heard mixed reviews, and then I just didn't have like the emotional capacity to deal with it. So I still have yet to read it. But one day. Firefly! So this is Big Damn Hero, a Firefly novel by James Lovegrove. This is based on the TV show Firefly, which is a sci-fi western cowboys in space show that was on the Sci-Fi Channel for only one season, and then it was canceled. And then they made a movie, which traumatized me. And this book is based on that. It's like, I think, basically like what would be like an episodic, like one of the episodes of the show, just like a little side plot adventure the gang goes on, I think. Which I love that. I need to read this. I remember buying this. Why did I not read it immediately? Huh. Now we have The Girl in the Tower by Catherine Arden. This is the second book, the sequel to The Bear and the Nightingale, which I loved. So the first book in this series, The Bear and the Nightingale, was about this young girl, Vasilisa, who grew up in the Russian wilderness with all of the folklore and the magical creatures that are part of her heritage and her culture. And then her mother dies when she's really young, who was like a notorious witch, but she was like a princess, so everyone was like cool that she was a witch. And then her dad remarries this like horrible woman who's like Christian or something, and doesn't want her to even talk about any of these magical creatures or any of the Russian folklore anymore. And as they stop like giving offerings or praying to these creatures, they're slowly disappearing. And as they're disappearing, something dangerous is like encroaching on her and her village, and Vasilisa is like coming into her own powers. It was very interesting. And like Winter is a character in this series, so that's why I didn't finish the series when I read the first one, because it wasn't like cold anymore, but it's literally snowing outside, so I really need to get on this. This guy, Terry Brooks, the annotated Sword of Shannara. Does anyone remember when the show, The Shannara Chronicles, came out and everyone was reading these books and no one liked them? So I wanted to read these because I love fantasy, I love epic fantasy, I want to read all of like the major series, and this one is. And so I bought this one because I think this book, The Sword of Shannara, is the one they based the first season of the show on, but it's not the first book in the series. So I was like, oh, I want to read the first book in the series, and then I never got it. Yeah, I think each book follows different characters, but within the same world, and usually like relatives of. And I believe the world Shannara is supposed to be like our world in kind of like a fantasy dystopian future. Is that a spoiler? I feel like at the end of this show, it was supposed to be like, so spoiler alert, I guess. Oh my God. Okay, I thought we were done. And then I remembered I had a pile of unread books next to my shelf. So let me get that. Okay, so this one I read like half of and then put it down and forgot. I sometimes do that. I try not to. I try to finish every book that I start unless I hate it. But sometimes, even if I don't hate them, if it's just like, it's boring, or if I misplace it, because that's what happens when I travel a lot. Sometimes I just don't have the physical book with me if I'm reading more than one book at a time. And then if I go too long without reading it, I just like forget I'm reading it. And this was one of those. This is what I talk about when I talk about Running, a memoir by Haruki Murakami, who is an amazing author. And this book is about his running. It's about his history with running and how it helps him mentally, how it helps him with his writing. What a terrible What a terrible explanation of this book. I bought this book when I was training for my first marathon, which I did at the beginning of 2020. And then I think I just forgot. I ran the marathon and I was like, all right, I don't need to think about running ever again. And then I have a few Book of the Month books that just started piling up. This one is In a Holidays by Christina Lauren, which is a contemporary romance set at the holiday time. I believe this is like a Groundhog Day situation. Yeah, so this is like a Groundhog Day situation, but at Christmas times, you know what I mean? Like she's repeating this week of Christmas over and over again. This girl goes up to her family cabin that her family shares with another family she grew up with, and she has a horrible time at Christmas, and she drives away, and she's so sad because this was going to be the last year that they spend at this holiday cabin. And then she wakes up the next day and it's the week before, and she starts the week all over again. And I believe, I'm assuming, there's gonna be a romance with one of the kids from the other family that she grew up with. And I got this in December and meant to read it for Christmas, and then I didn't, so next year. Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. This is a prequel to the prequel of Practical Magic. Now, Practical Magic is one of my favorite movies of all time. The book I really liked, but it's not as good as the movie, which is crazy to say. I know that's like blasphemous, but I think the movie is better. So Practical Magic, the book and movie, is about Jillian and Sally Owens, who are sisters who grew up in a small town in Massachusetts where their family, the Owens girls, are notorious for being witches, and basically everyone in the town hates them. And it's about their lives and love, and about the Owens curse, about how any man who dares love an Owens woman is doomed to die. I don't know why I got southern there. This is in Massachusetts. And so the prequel to that is about their aunts who raised them, and them growing up in New York City and their experience with love and loss as Owens women. Now this one is the prequel to that one, and is about the origins of the Owens curse and how this woman during the Salem witch trials kind of starts this curse on her whole family. I believe she's gonna get dumped. So I'm really excited for this one. Another one, Susanna Clark's Piranesi. So I believe Piranesi is based on like the ancient Greek mythology around the labyrinth. That could be totally wrong, but it's a house with a labyrinth. And look at this cover. I'm just guessing it's about like the Minotaur and the labyrinth, but whatever, I don't know. But it says for readers of Neil Gaiman's The Ocean at the End of the Lane, my favorite, and Madeline Miller's Circe, Come Off It. Ooh, yes, Ruth Ware's The Turn of the Key. This one is a thriller, which I know nothing about. So this one is about a nanny in London. She goes to be a live-in nanny with this family, and it is about the unraveling of the family life and her ending up in prison because one of the children dies. I read the first page of this, and I believe it starts off with her in prison and she's like writing to a lawyer the story of how she ended up in prison. Ruth Ware, I read like The Woman in Cabin whatever, The Woman in Cabin 10, which I really liked, and she's a ton more that are supposed to be amazing, but I need to be in the mood for a thriller. I can't just always read a thriller. Like I can always read fantasy, but thrillers, I need to be in the right mindset. And next time I am, I'll pick this one up. No, I have two more. Kin by Emma Donoghue. Now she wrote The Room, which they turned into a movie with Brie Larson. And I saw the movie, but I did not read the book. But Emma Donoghue is an Irish author. I love Irish fiction and writing. Some of my favorite books are written by Irish authors. So I love that. I love that for her. This is about an old man who is retiring and going to the south of France where he grew up. He lives in New York, but he's going on a trip to the south of France where he grew up now that his wife's dead. And he finds out before he goes that he has this like great nephew that he's never met who has recently been orphaned and needs a family member to take him in. So he takes the little boy on his trip to the south of France, and I'm assuming they bond and become a family and hopefully get to stay a family. So this one, another book of the month, is Megan Golden Megan Golden's The Night Swim, which is another mystery thriller. This is about a girl who runs a podcast, like a true crime podcast, and she comes to this town to investigate a rape case that's been happening. And she's here to document the case, but while she's there, someone is kind of following her and writing her these letters, and it turns out that their sister went missing or was murdered in the town. Yeah. I think went missing in the town like 20 years ago, and she wants this girl who runs the podcast to investigate. So it's like these two different crimes happening in this town 20 years apart. I'm sure they're going to parallel. I'm sure it'll be interesting. And yeah, I should read it. The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. Now I, again, started this book. I read like the first 2 chapters and then I left it here when I went to go visit my family for a few weeks after Christmas or something, and I loved the first 2 chapters, and then I can't believe I forgot to read it. This is about 2 twin sisters who are light-skinned Black women, and about their lives as they kind of separate from each other and the different paths they take. I believe one of them starts living life as like a passing white woman, and the other one, I believe, is just living her life in the Black community and how that affects them. I believe there's also some trans representation in here. I don't know where that comes in, but we love to see it. And it was really good so far, and I really need to finish it because it was so good. Now this is actually the last one. No, it's not. I lied. There's one more. Frederick Bachman's Anxious People. I love Frederick Bachman. I read My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry and the Beartown trilogy. He's super talented, Sweden. Oh my god, I was right. So Frederick Bachman is a Swedish author and is super, you probably know who he is, very widely known. A lot of his books have been translated into English. Such a talent, is so good at writing characters, especially like quirky, unique ones. Especially, I loved My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, and I also really want to read, but I don't own, A Man Called Ove, which is about like a quirky old man living his life. I really don't know. I don't even know anything about the plot of this, but I'm on it. Actual last one. We've reached the end, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure I'll have like a little count in the bottom, so we're gonna see. This is SPQR by Mary Beard. It is a history of the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. A lot of stuff to cover in one book, which is why it's kind of hefty, but I'm very excited for this one. I've been wanting to read this book for actual years, and then I found this hardcover copy in a used bookstore. So that's it. That's all the books. I'm gonna have to count editing. I did not keep track at all. But yeah, that's all the books on my bookshelf that I own, that I have not read. And now you can hold me accountable. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these, if any of these are your favorites, if any of these I desperately need to read immediately. And I'll see you next time.